y'all. Welcome back to Gadfly, the podcast about third parties, fringe candidates, and just generally weird American electoral history. I'm Dusty Wilson.
And I'm Una O'Leary.
Man, I cannot with this energy right now. I have been locked in what could be kindly described as a millennial office den for the past year. And
both have. Get over it. Nerd.
I love this. I love this. This infinite Meisner exercise very, very much.
Oh my god,
man. So Una, have you listened to this CPAC national anthem?
Sorry, what? The answer is no. What?
Oh man. Okay. Yeah. So going into this week, there was a part of me that was like, maybe I should watch all of CPAC and then we could do an episode on CPAC. But literally everyone I listen to who does that sort of thing for a living, pretty much all of them were just like, it was weirdly boring this year. So yeah, aside from the runic white nationalist stage that they had.
Oh
and,
yeah.
That's real delightful.
So yeah, I looked at it. It's like, oh, so they took the Airbnb symbol and turned it into a Nazi. That's what it was.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah, it's like an old, like, I don't know, Odin rune. I don't know Viking shit that good. That's not my bag. That's not my history details. It's this, a little bit about Genghis Khan, and a little bit about how Islam started. That's about it for me.
I know enough to know that the Viking and Norse gods are so much gayer than we could ever imagine. That's what I've learned.
Look, I think that's really what we need in modern religion now. Gods who fuck.
And really out there sexually.
Oh yeah. Oh my God. Una, this is our new grift. We have a new grift. We got to bring back non-white supremacist Norse religion.
I'm halfway there. I started watching Barbarians, the German show about okay, I am enjoying it. It's very like Shakespearean in its drama, and that is very, like very sons and fathers and like big melodrama moments. But it is delightful because it's a German production, and so the Germanic tribes speak German, and then the Romans speak kind of like a loose Latin. And I just appreciate, growing up with like Gladiator, where everyone just had like a high, like high upper crust British accent.
Sounds like your high school drama teacher.
Yes.
Take that, Russell Crowe. All right, so the highlight of CPAC for me, aside from their blatantly racist stage symbolism, was their performance of the national anthem, I believe on the third day. Now, their performance was a woman by the name of Sailor Sable. She is from what I could tell, either a sophomore or a junior at the University of Central Florida. I think previous to this, she worked as a camp counselor at some point. I don't know why she got hired, but she got hired to sing what we all know to be the easiest song in American culture, the Star Spangled Banner.
Oh boy.
So I'm going to see if this works.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light?
Now, I will say, just feel free to stop at any point. The beginning I kind of get, because it's you do the, if there's any trick I have to try to still act like I know how to sing, it's like you do that big boom diaphragm voice, and it makes it sound, it gives you that authority, like you know what you're doing.
It's very America the Beautiful. Okay, I'm ready.
What so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight.
Now, Una.
Oh no.
Yeah, all right, let's break that down. So I believe we all know that stars exist in the sky. There's like some weird Lady Gaga shit going on here, like off and on.
I'm just hearing, like, if I were asked, I am not a singer at all, really not musical. And if I were asked to sing, I would probably go down a register. Like lower from my natural register, because everything's going to get thrown into my nasal cavities anyway.
Yeah.
But there's not a whole lot that's on tune.
Yeah. So what you're saying is you would pick a key.
I would try to pick a key and then stick with that key.
And I think this goes to show how much of a fucking amateur you are.
This is why I don't get asked to sing.
We're so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there.
Let's take a pause. Look, I'm not gonna. It's a tough song. It's notably difficult. I would like to note that she did fuck up probably the easiest part of that song.
She did. She
Like,
did.
Our flag was still there. Those notes. It's just like I believe it's like a C to a B to a C. It's real. It's not that tough.
Like no one is coming in here expecting Whitney Houston.
No,
Like
no.
it's hard because the best version of this was and it always will be Marvin Gaye, American National Anthem, February 13th, 1983. I forget what it I think it was the NBA All-Stars. And that's how it should be sung. Like that, like we should have all realized in 1983, like, oh, okay, we're all singing it like that. Like you've never, let me ask you this. Have you ever heard the Star Spangled Banner and been like, you know what? I'm ready to bone someone. That's what Marvin Gaye did.
Yeah.
That's what he did. So I'm not expecting perfection.
Yeah. It's just, I think you're making a good point. What we should do for the Star Spangled Banner from here on out is you have two options. You have Marvin Gaye and you have Whitney Houston. They're both on tape because look, who has money to burn a CD nowadays? And you just you put it into the fucking boombox and you play that shit and then you get on with your fucking sporting event or your racist stage times.
Oh my God. Yes, exactly.
Now what is coming up, I believe is described best in the play Angels in America, said by the character Belize, who says the cracker who wrote the Star Spangled Banner knew what he was doing when he put the note for free so high that no one could reach it. And we're coming up to that. And when someone hits that note right, holy fuck, is it beautiful.
Yes.
So I hope you're ready. I hope you're ready to love America.
Oh, say does that Star Spangled Banner yet wave o'er the land of the free?
Vibrato is not supposed to be in this song, Una.
Why did that keep going?
Look, if there's anything that I have learned as someone who grew up loving country music and watching NASCAR events and just generally being a redneck of sorts, people go buck fucking wild if you hold that free note for any time longer than 5 seconds. They will applaud. They'll stand up. They'll fucking just lose their goddamn fucking mind. And it doesn't even have to be good. You just have to try and people will fucking love it.
Have to keep going.
Yeah, it's like I'm already this deep. The thing though is I've never heard someone go flat to sharp on that note before. That's I don't know. Yeah, let's get to the end of this.
And the home of the brave.
And I know you can't see this. She got a standing ovation at CPAC for that.
Of course she did. She showed up. Everyone else said no. Delete my email.
So this is the thing that blows my fucking mind. It's not like conservatives. I mean, they don't have a ton of artists on their side, but they do have some. I mean, most notably, you have Joy Villa, who, while, not super well known, she's mostly known for wearing a Trump dress to the Grammys on a couple of occasions, but she can at least sing. She can at least hit notes. You have the singer from Three Doors Down. You have the band Trapped. You have Chris Novoselic of Nirvana, as we ranted about last week. There are people you could call who would fucking show up who are capable of singing this song. Either someone bowed out at the last second and they just grabbed her, or I don't know what the fuck caused this to happen.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they don't actually have any money to pay aforementioned stars because it's all in Trump's pocket right now.
That's a good point.
And let me say this to this nobody from Central Florida who suddenly got her shot to sing the American National Anthem at CPAC. My heart goes out to her because it didn't sound like she had an earpiece. It didn't sound like she had any musical accompaniment.
None.
Until people started clapping because she managed to sing free as long as I could with a deep breath. I didn't even realize that she was in front of people.
Yeah. Yeah, it does kind of have that feeling of I'm in the shower and someone's forcing me to do this.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think there was any rehearsal. Otherwise, she definitely would have picked a key. I think that's a really good point we're probably all going to feel like real assholes in about a year or two when we find out that she was just like, I was working staff for this event. Someone grabbed me and said, hey, could you sing this? We'll pay you an extra $50. And
yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
Oh, God. Yeah, this is absolutely going to be one of those things.
In which case, good, you know what? That took a lot of bravery to stand up there and sing the worst national anthem known to national anthems.
I mean, it wasn't Roseanne's national anthem. That one was, oh boy.
But that was intentional.
No, that's a good point. Oh man. So on that note, I think it's about time that we hop
On
into
that
this
note!
episode. Oh god. to burn everything. Burn it. Oh my god. So today we're going back in time. You know what? We've been spending too much time in the 20th century. We're
I've been
getting
telling you this for days.
we, we're getting too modern, too highfalutin, too many troubles that are hitting close to home.
Yes.
So I think it's time we travel back to the 19th century, a time where men were diseased and
Legally allowed to own me and other people.
yeah. So today we're going to be talking about a fellow by the name of Jacob Coxey.
Coxey.
It's a very unfortunate last name, but he's just weird. He's delightfully weird in a number of ways, and I'm very excited to talk about him. So I'm going to give a shout out at the end of this because I got a bulk of the information from the Massillon Historical Society in Massillon, Ohio. If we were still able to travel, I would probably take a small weekend trip there just to dive into their archives. It sounds freaking amazing. So a huge shout out to them going forward for this. So in 1854, Jacob Coxey was born in Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania. His father Thomas worked at a sawmill. He was an engineer there. But 6 years later, sensing that the industry was about to die off, he picked up his family and moved them to Danville, Pennsylvania, where he got a job at an iron mill. Now, by 1970, Jacob would be noted as an extremely smart kid, and he would end up graduating from Danville Public School. It's believed he also spent a year at a private school at some point, but it doesn't say where or why, or if it was like some sort of college prep thing. Either which way, he was there and he was done. And once he was done with his studying, he immediately took a job as a water boy at the iron mill where his dad worked. I'm assuming that means he brought people water as they needed it, mainly because putting water in molten iron is super fucking dangerous. If you ever just want to have a real anxiety attack watching YouTube, there's a video of a guy who threw an empty water bottle into a pit of molten iron, and just the whole place fucking explodes. It is molten iron going fucking everywhere. That shit is unstable. It is a very dangerous job.
Ugh.
So Jacob would end up rising up the ranks at the mill in what sounds like the kind of natural job progression of an iron worker, going from water boy to machine oiler to boiler tender to station engineer. And by the time he rose the ladder, he was making a full $1 every night for a 12-hour shift. And while that sounds like bullshit, just remember that $1 then would equal about $19.97 now. So then you divide that by 12 hours and you realize Jake was making about $1.66 an hour.
But purchasing power? I don't know.
So by 1974, Jacob would marry Caroline Ammerman, and the pair would end up having 4 children together. Now, the weird thing is Jacob would end up having a number of children in his life, but it's really hard to tell when he had them and when each of them kind of showed up. To the best of my research, at least 3 of the names of his children at this time were Jacob Jr., he had a daughter named Mamie, and he had a son around this time that he named Legal Tender.
Amazing.
Yeah. And yeah, Legal Tender became kind of like a small celebrity at times, but, you know, as happens during the time, when Legal Tender was 7 years old, he ended up catching scarlet fever and ended up passing.
Oh, Legal Tender.
Yeah, I know. When you have a name like that, you deserve to at least hit college so you can change your name if you want, or just lean the fuck into it.
Yes.
Like, be like Reality Winner. Just fucking lean into that shit.
Think of the pickup lines.
Yeah, oh my God.
I try to.
Yeah, my money's no good here, but I'm good everywhere. Legal Tender. Pew, pew, pew. He's just like, just call me Lee. I don't want to give you my full name. So 8 years after working at the mill, Jacob would end up opening his own business with an uncle in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. The two pooled their money together and opened a scrap iron company. And by all rights, it seemed like it was actually doing pretty good. The uncle would run the business in Harrisburg, and Jacob would travel around Pennsylvania and Ohio buying up old scrap to be able to change into, I guess, recycled scrap at their factory. But 3 years after working this job, Jacob would be on a business trip to Ohio to buy a suitable scrap iron for the company. And while he was there, he fell head over heels in love with the most beautiful city he had ever visited. That's right, Jacob discovered Massillon, Ohio.
Oh.
For those of you unfamiliar with the greater Canton-Akron area of Northeast Ohio, Massillon is the second largest city in Stark County, and nowadays is mostly known for the kids of the city being freakishly good at sports. While the city now has a population of about 32,000, it has the distinction of hosting one of the original charter teams of the National Football League, the Massillon Tigers. The Tigers were a really big team in the NFL predecessor Ohio League, and while usually not turning much of a profit at home, they would always bring in huge crowds in the rival cities of Canton and Akron. When the NFL started putting together their inaugural roster, it made a lot of sense to include Massillon, but when the time came to decide on the team, no one really wanted to make a decision. One person wanted to make them a traveling team that never played in Massillon, and they would just be like, oh, it's Massillon, pay the money, you remember them, right? And literally everyone else there just didn't want to talk about it. And in the end, the Tigers would never play for the NFL. But since there was someone at the meeting claiming to represent them, they became a founding team on a technicality. Since then, the Massillon Washington High School has become an absolute football powerhouse and has produced dozens of athletes, coaches, and the like. Even current Chicago mayor, Lori Lightfoot. So, thanks for that, I guess.
Great.
Yay. That being said, when Jacob got there, the small city of about 7,000 people was on the verge of an industrial boom. In 1884, Russell and Company would begin producing their own steam engine and would lead that to becoming one of the largest tractor companies in the nation. In 1887, the Massillon Bridge Company would build and install a multitude of truss bridges that are still working in multiple places today. Also, the first ever locomotive cowcatcher, which is like that weird metal thing on the front of trains that's supposed to knock shit out of the way, was invented in Massillon around that time.
Goddamn.
And for a young burgeoning industrialist like Jacob, he sensed that this was exactly where he had to be. He messaged home to Harrisburg that he was staying, sold his share in the scrap metal company, and proceeded to buy a farm and a silica quarry from a dude named John Paul in a bundled deal. You couldn't just get the farm, you couldn't just get the quarry. Had to buy both. John's getting the fuck out of town. So Coxey would name his new farm Coxeyetta.
Fine.
Following this moment of pure creativity, Jacob bought a crushing mill to crush up all the silica from his new quarry. See, it turns out silica is very integral to the production of not just glass, but also iron. You know, all that stuff the whole industry of Massillon is about to rely on. And once industry began to boom, Jacob made obscene amounts of bank. And what do you do when you're suddenly just raking in a fuck pile of cash? That's right, Una. You start getting horses to fuck so their kids can go fast. To put it less creepily, Jacob started breeding racehorses.
Okay. Look, wait, are the kids riding these to school, or is this like he's becoming part of the elite class of racehorse breeding?
I think it's a mix of getting into the elite class, but he also at the time kind of got into a bit of a gambling addiction. So I think he was already at the racetrack.
So for those at home playing Gadfly Bingo, yes, this is another person with a gambling addiction.
Yeah. The big difference though between Mike Lindell and Jacob Coxey is Jacob didn't fail at it as much as Mike. Like he fluctuated a lot with money, but he never went bankrupt due to his gambling.
He never went 25 to 60K before turning 18.
No, he was busy. He was busy giving people water at a breakneck job. So he would end up buying 3 horse farms, 2 in Kentucky and one just a few miles from him in Canal Fulton. And once again, he turned out to be really good at it. A number of his horses became really well known, and the racing banner that a lot of his horses would race under became well known throughout the country as well. But like I said, he discovered he really loved gambling. I mean, you're already at the track, you've already sold a horse, might as well spend half of it on something fucking fun. Double or nothing that shit. The problem though is that it paid a huge toll on his marriage. And less than a year after he began breeding horses and gambling, Carolyn would divorce Jacob.
Oof. Scandal.
1981 would mark the first year in decades that Jacob would take a fervent interest in politics. As a young man, Jacob would place his first ever presidential vote for Democrat Samuel Tilden, but it's believed a lot of the reason behind this was because his dad Thomas was a Democrat. But by the age of 23, Jacob had suddenly broken with the Democrats and become heavily involved with a new up-and-coming political party, the Greenbacks. Without diving too super deep into the party, and with promises of saving that deep dive for a future day, the Greenback Party was what one could call leftist as fuck, especially for the 1870s. The party was anti-monopolies, pro-labor rights, including the right to unionize and the creation of an 8-hour workday, and could by all rights be considered very early democratic socialists. But the big issue for the party is that they fucking hated the gold standard. So I know we've talked about this a bit, but just as a bit of a refresher, back in the day, US currency, the only way you could produce more of it is if you had gold bullion to back it up. So if someone wanted to turn in $1, they could technically get a dollar gold coin from the government. And you were never allowed to produce more paper currency than you had of gold. But also at the time, there were people who thoroughly believed that we shouldn't be using gold. We should be using silver. And this is mainly because in the West, a fuck ton of silver mines had been discovered, and people were really wanting to sell more and more silver. But the Greenbacks, they took a completely different track. To them, the backing of cash meant that the US government was limited in how much money they could produce. If they only had 100 grand in gold, then they could only ever allow 100 grand in cash to ever be in circulation. To the Greenbacks, this meant stifling the economy and a guarantee that wages could never be raised due to the finite available cash. So they proposed that the government should just get rid of any standard and just print a reasonable amount of money, enough that people could raise wages while not causing hyperinflation. I'm not gonna lie, if I was being paid $1.50 to work a 12-hour shift every night for 6 days a week, yeah, that sounds really fucking great.
I just love this after hearing so many third parties, especially like further into the 20th century and 21st century that we get, are so rabid for the gold standard. Yeah. It's just nice to hear from the opposing side.
Yeah, like a completely different idea.
Even if I'm listening to their argument of like, just like print a reasonable amount of money. I'm like, oh, sweet summer child. That's
yeah.
Even I know that's not a credible statement.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of those optimistic sort of statements that is like, surely we won't print more money than will be helpful. That'll be fine.
Yeah.
But I mean, they make a really good point that if you want wages to go up, there kind of needs to be more money in existence. So at the age of 23, Jacob would dive headfirst into the Greenback Party and establish his own Greenbackers Club in Danville, Pennsylvania. He would attend his first ever political convention in 1878 in Toledo, where the Greenback Party officially merged with the Labor Reform Party. Jacob would end up taking a hiatus from direct political action for a number of years, and during that time, the Greenback Party would run for president a few times and then depressingly fall apart in 1888. How they fell apart is so sad. So essentially in 1888, they were going to meet to nominate a new president, and they decided to meet in Cincinnati in May, and not enough people showed up. There was a decent crowd, but not enough to actually consider it a quorum. So they decided, all right, we're just going to wait until September. We're all going to agree to come back here to Cincinnati, and we'll figure it out then. And then September rolls around, and only 8 people showed up.
No.
Look, if there's anything that just speaks immediate death for a party, it is postponing your convention. We've seen it more than enough times, especially in the 19th century. But yeah, and then they just died immediately in Cincinnati.
Oh God, like a group text with people you don't really like.
So by 1891, Jake was on the market for a new political party. And it just so happened that there was a party that saw the husk of the Greenback Party and said, yeah, we'll take that. So the People's Party, who in some regions were known as the Populist Party, and how we're going to be referring to them from here on out, they're another party that we're going to discuss in deeper detail one day. But for now, here's the basics. The Populists were, once again, super left for the time and pretty much democratic socialists. Much like the Greenbacks, they supported labor reform, but placed an even stronger focus on the needs of farmers. This was mainly due to the origin of the party being from the agrarian movement called the Farmers Alliance. In fact, in their 1892 convention, the party was initially called the Farmers Alliance, but journalists writing at the event referred to them as the Populist Party, and the name stuck. The big difference, though, between them and the Greenbacks came with how they viewed how cash should be made. So while the Greenbacks were just like, hey, we should just print money as we need it, the Populist Party believed in a concept called bimetallism. So instead of picking a gold standard or a silver standard, just use them both, baby. We got them both. Let's fucking do it.
It's all gravy.
So Jacob joined the Populist Party the year prior to the 1892 election. And just as his luck seems to be, he joined right before the presidential nominee, James Weaver, ended up winning 5 states and 22 electoral votes.
Oh, shit.
However, it wasn't direct political success that was prominent on Jacob's mind. In 1891, he would propose for the first time his life's goal, the creation of a public works project for the unemployed. Specifically, Jacob proposed the Good Roads Program, in which he requested that the government allocate $500 million for the creation of a national county road system. He stated that all men who were hired would be promised at minimum a wage of $1.50 per day and a maximum 8-hour workday no matter what. So to summarize that in today's dollars, Jacob wants the government to set aside $14.3 billion in order to pay people to build all the roads everywhere. And those men would make about $5.40 an hour. So not, the super best, but, progress is progress compared to $1.66 that he was making. The big issue, though, is in 1893, when the project would theoretically begin, the government's entire budget was somewhere around $465 million. So if this became a thing, Jacob would immediately double the government's budget out of nowhere.
Yeah. Or all budget is now road.
Exactly. Sorry, military, we're shutting you down. We were really excited about, taking over Cuba one day, maybe even the Philippines, but we got to build roads for these weird auto contraptions.
Sure, you're very excited about the steam engine and how it pertains to boats. However, can I interest you in a road?
And look, don't get me wrong. I am a nerd for infrastructure. If you want to fix those roads, great. Dwight Eisenhower, one of my favorite presidents, just because he made the interstate highway system have a required amount of miles of straight highway. So if need be, you could land a plane on it during wartime.
Yep.
It's clever as shit. I love it. And I love me some trains. This would have been really freaking cool just to always have this as a standby for people who are unemployed. You go out, you build some roads for a while until you find something, that you would prefer to do, or you could just continue to do that.
There is a bill, I think, proposed initially by the VP, or it started in the House, but it was basically this idea of guaranteed job employment for every American through the U.S. government with a living wage of $15 at least, and a living wage, with the idea being like, all right, you want to be free market about this?
Yeah.
To the employers who are still paying like $9 an hour and crabbing about it, guess what? You have competition now.
Exactly. So despite all of these hurdles, Jacob began a full-fledged speaking tour of his idea. He wrote congressmen, he took important meetings, and he even presented his idea at the 1892 Populist Party convention in St. Louis. And while he didn't win over the whole party to his plan, the Ohio branch of the party made Coxey's Good Roads program an official part of their state platform. 12 years after establishing himself in Massillon, Jacob was already garnering national attention for how good he was at business. He was selling silica all over to iron and steel mills across the country. His operation employed 50 men, and he had amassed a fortune of $250,000, or in today's money, $7.2 million.
Whew.
But a sentence like that, at least in this podcast, it's always got to be followed up by pure, uncut tragedy.
Damn it, Dusty.
So we talked a little bit about the Panic of 1893 when we talked about Horace Greeley about a month ago. And in that episode, I promised we would dive deeper into it one day. And today's the fucking day. Because the Panic of 1893 plays such a huge fucking role in Jacob Coxey's life.
Oh, no.
So how the hell did the Panic of 1893 happen? Well, first and foremost, it was essentially a financial depression, and it was the worst that the country had ever faced in its life up until that point. So one of the original Kickstarters began in around 1890. There was a British merchant bank called Baring Brothers, and they were pushing really hard to get people to invest in Argentina. And 1890, though, would turn into a particularly rough time for Argentina. First, there was a massive wheat crop failure, and second, there was an attempted coup. Known as the Revolution of the Park, members of the Civic Union joined together to oust authoritarian President Miguel Juarez Selman. The coup would last only for a few days and result in somewhere between 300 to 1,500 people dead or wounded.
Holy cow.
The Civic Union would fail, mainly due to being heavily outgunned and outmanned, but they would eventually succeed in getting Selman to resign his post. And the Civic Union still exists today in Argentina as the Radical Civic Union, who are, you guessed it, radical centrists.
No!
Yep.
No!
Hey guys, we should do a coup to get rid of authoritarians, and then we should figure out a way to bridge the gap between both sides. Great, we're radicals. And to make matters worse, Baring Brothers noticed that their backup investment recommendations in South Africa and Australia were starting to tank as well. In a panic, investors began exchanging their paper American money for gold coins minted by the US Treasury to back up the dollar. And since financially things were going bad for them, they hoarded the gold bullion, meaning America suddenly had less and less paper money they could allow into circulation. Meanwhile, in America, one of the first big hits was the railroad industry bubble bursting. Since the country was manifesting all kinds of destiny out west, they were building just a ton of railroads, whether they needed them or not. And when that happens, well, industries burst. The first date of things going wrong with that would have been February 20th. That day, the Philadelphia and Reading Railroad, of monopoly fame, had a number of their assets fall into receivership, meaning they spent too much money, were now broke, and a ton of their stuff was about to get repossessed to pay those debts. 2 weeks later, newly elected President Grover Cleveland would try to stop the oncoming depression, but probably only made things massively worse. See, Grover believed that the thing that was pushing America into this terrible crisis was the fact that America was forced to buy silver. The Sherman Silver Purchase Act required the government purchase a certain amount of money to be able to back up their own currency, and so Grover decided he was just going to completely get rid of the law. The law was revoked, and it completely destroyed the silver industry in the American West.
So another industry tanked.
And not only that, now you have even less money to back up. You have less metal to back up your money. And so now you have even less money.
Like at this point, I'm just trading crystals, Grover.
Never trusted Grover. Even Sesame Street Grover. Fuck that guy. I wouldn't trust him for fucking anything. As my grandparents would say, I wouldn't trust Grover to sit the right way on a toilet seat.
Amazing.
So upon Cleveland repealing the act, people freaked the fuck out. There were rushes on banks to get all their money out. And without people's savings accounts, banks had no cash, which led them to pushing really hard to collect all available debts, which caused even more panic. Meanwhile, in London, international investors noted how freaked America was and dropped all of their stocks in American companies and used that money to buy even more gold from the US Treasury.
Sell, sell, sell. We have to save the pound.
Man, that invisible hand is freaked out.
Please stop slapping me, invisible hand. Oh my God.
So for the next 4 years, America would fall into its worst depression to date. Stock prices plummeted. 500 banks were shut down, along with 15,000 businesses and thousands of farms. Unemployment rates skyrocketed, hitting a high of 43% unemployment in Michigan, 35% in New York, and 25% in Pennsylvania.
God damn.
The U.S. gold reserves fell so low that Grover Cleveland was forced to borrow $65 million in gold from J.P. Morgan and the Rothschild family. Yep.
Whoa. JP Morgan was just sitting on this cash and was like, I'll lend it to you with interest.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh my
100%.
God.
Him and the Rothschilds family, not to sound like some Alex Jones fucking.
I know. This is why I'm not even mentioning it. I'm just focusing on
it's fine. Yeah, JP Morgan's the safe one on this. Like the Rothschilds, technically it was their bank that did it. But yeah,
the
Morgan,
wasps.
as a person was just like, I have a fuck ton of gold, dude. My rates are horribly unfair.
I'm going to treat you like a payday lender.
But no city in America felt the horrors of the panic more uniquely than Denver, Colorado. You see, after Cleveland repealed the Silver Act, the silver industry just immediately tanked. 435 mines would close in 1893 alone, along with 377 businesses, leading to 45,000 people who were suddenly out of work. Unemployed miners flooded the city for work that wasn't there to be had. Rescue missions would end up forming, but so many people arrived that they had to place a limit on aid, and stated they would only serve folks who had been in the city for more than 2 months. I'm not really sure how you prove that back then, but...
By beard length? I don't know.
Look, sorry, you got 2.5 inches on that beard. Got to be 3. There were some really depressing stories. Most of it was about like industrialists who had made their money off the backs of miners and things like that. Or just them losing their businesses, losing their fortunes, losing their hotels. One in particular story that I thought was really interesting was this woman who went by the name of Baby Doe, who married. She essentially had an affair with this industrialist in Denver. He broke off his marriage. They got married. The whole town fucking hated her, and she was just like, "I was born to poverty. I'm taking my fucking shot."
Yeah, I'm taking my bag.
And then when the panic hit, they lost all of their money. She viewed that as a punishment from God and spent the rest of her life essentially in rags, living in a shack right outside one of the mines that got repossessed, and would die at the age of 81, frozen to the shack floor.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
This is straight up Greek tragedy.
Yeah, it's let me get her full name because Baby Doe is a very unfair way to refer to her.
It paints a picture. I'm not gonna lie.
Baby Doe Tabor was her name, and probably one of the more tasteless things I found in this, someone opened a set of restaurants called Baby Doe Taylor's like mine shack or matchless mine, which is where she lived, and apparently the food was stuck in the 70s and god awful. But the restaurant itself just looked like someone picked up a falling apart ramshackle mine shaft and just placed it in the middle of Dallas.
Oof.
Yeah, it did really well for a while until it didn't.
Like the industrialist.
Exactly, yeah. But yeah, in Denver, they dealt with not just losing their jobs, but going through an enormous psychological toll of not being able to get help. There were reports of people getting in fights over 5-cent debts. Some guy, I think, ended up getting stabbed to death because he couldn't afford his beer tab.
Holy cow.
Yeah, Denver had a very rough time. And as for Jacob, the panic would hit him pretty hard as well, but not as bad as others. He did come very close to losing his quarry, but in the process, he was able to save it by selling all 3 of his horse farms, which in the end, probably not a bad idea. I mean, if it gets you away from gambling, now's the time to stop.
Yeah.
But one of the things that really hurt Jake the most is he had to lay off some of his workers, and it seemed to really affect him, like devastated him to his core to have to take away people's jobs. Jake would push even harder for his Public Works Good Roads program, and this time he was even able to get a seat at the 1893 Chicago's World Fair. I mean, sort of. He was at a kind of offshoot called the Silver Circuit, I believe it was called, where it was just a bunch of free silver people who wanted to back the dollar with silver, and they were just like, we'll take all listeners, and so he shows up to talk about his Good Roads program. But aside from that, it didn't really get that much further into reality, at least until 1894. By that point, Jacob gained a new ally in the fight, populist senator and beard enthusiast William Peffer of Kansas. Peffer took a liking to Coxey's plan and worked with him to create a plan to save the country from ever falling into another economic crisis ever again, which we all know worked. Part 1 of the bill would be Jacob's Good Roads plan, and the second would be a brand new part. And this essentially stated that there would be a law that would allow state and city governments to attain a loan directly from the Treasury Department for any public works or improvement program they wish to do. The loan would be charged 1% interest and would be paid within 25 years of receipt. Now, the 1% interest was only there to be able to pay for the printing costs of all the money that would be sent out for this. And if the 1% interest was more than the printing cost to print the greenback dollars, then that money would be put back into public works programs. But once again, you start to kind of flirt with hyperinflation at that point. Because look, we all know the 1890s was a time of moral government, especially in, say, New York City or Chicago or everywhere. This program would have been taken advantage of in the worst ways possible. Oh, yeah. And they deemed the name of the plan, they called it the Big Idea.
Yeah, you really hit oil on that one.
Look, if there's one thing Jacob Coxey is bad at, it is naming things. He has his farm Coxeyetta. He has the Big Idea, the Good Roads program. He's naming shit, not his thing. His son is Legal Tender. That was the peak of his creativity.
He could have called this Legal Tender, and that would have made in honor of Legal Tender. God rest his soul. Legal Tender
Memorial Bill. I mean, to be fair, it would be another. 1984, I believe, was when he was born, so it'd be another 7 years before he was dead. But if he was dead, perfect time to honor him.
Yes.
So the thing with this bill is Congress fucking hated it, mainly because they're like, yeah, hyperinflation. There's going to be hyperinflation. People are just going to steal this money. There's going to be fraud everywhere. Are there checks? Are there balances? How bad is this going to fucking get? But honestly, it's a plan, and it's a good way to get people to work, especially when unemployment is somewhere between 25 to 43%.
Yeah, get them off the streets and on the roads.
Funny you should say that.
Oh no. Oh no, what have I done?
So at this point, Jacob Coxey and Senator Peffer needed a plan to convince Congress to act. And Jacob would turn to his friend, a man by the name of Carl Brown. Now, Jacob met Carl in Chicago in 1893, and the two became immediately close friends. Such good friends that Jacob invited Carl to come to Massillon and live in his home. Because prior to this, Carl didn't really have much of a place to live. He was a labor advocate and a protester, and he kind of went where the wind took him.
Yeah, we all have that friend.
So now faced with strong congressional opposition, Carl came up with a plan to convince the government to act. And not gonna lie, the plan was bold as fuck. The idea was that Jacob would lead a march of unemployed men from Massillon, Ohio to Washington, D.C. Ideally, the march would lead to national publicity, and when the men reached the Capitol, they might end up presenting a strong enough show of numbers to convince the politicians that the big idea was both popular and necessary. As Carl Brown called it, a petition in boots. The march would begin on Easter Sunday, March 25th, 1894, a day that was noted as being one of those cold, damp, and generally shitty Ohio days. In total, 50 local men showed up to march along with Jacob. And I mean, to be fair, they would march. Jake had a bit of a different setup. Instead, he would lead the men while riding a horse-drawn buggy, and he would also wear a tattered Union military uniform. This would cause the press to label him as General Coxey, and the men with him as Coxey's army. But while Jacob did get to ride his way down to Washington, D.C., he did spend his nights with his men, camping with them and hanging out with them. I would really only leave them to take breakfast at whatever local hotel was there serving at the time. The march itself was planned to take about 35 days, and while the march only started with 50 men, Coxey's army would end up growing exponentially by the day. You see, it turns out a lot of people out west really liked Carl's idea. The people began to put together their own armies with the goal of meeting up with Jacob's men. Charles T. Kelly of San Francisco began marching east with about 2,000 people. So upon making camp in Sacramento, the group was forcibly kicked out by a band of armed civilians. However, they did end up receiving a ton of support the further they traveled. For much of their journey, they were offered free passage on trains, and people donated food and supplies during their marches between stops. The group made their way through Ogden, Utah, Denver, and eventually to Omaha. In Omaha, they reached their last ever free train ride because it seemed once you get past the Mississippi, people did not like these folks. Because at least west of the Mississippi, people understand why they're marching. The silver industry's dead. The railroad industry is fucking dead.
Yeah, there's a way of life.
Exactly. So now without a free train to ride, Kelly's men tried to commandeer a train in Council Bluffs, Iowa, but they were stopped by the U.S. Army. Undeterred, they went back across the Douglas Street Bridge into Omaha, and they stole an engine and some train cars. However, Kelly immediately turned down the equipment, and the group continued east on foot. It should also be noted that in Omaha, the Army gained a new recruit and transient future novelist Jack London. Apparently, Jack London used to be just a complete fucking vagabond for a long amount of time before he became a novelist.
Doesn't surprise me.
However, without the benefit of rail to travel, more and more people left Kelly's march, and by the time they reached DC, only about 300 would remain. And the fun thing about these mini armies full-on stealing trains to get to DC, it wasn't that uncommon at all, because most of these men, especially from the Pacific Northwest, were former railroad workers who viewed the railroad barons' greed as the main reason for them being out of work. One leader, William Hogan, who led an army of 500 men out of Butte, Montana, probably had the greatest success in this particular form of protest. His group met up at the Northern Pacific train yards, requested a train for free, and when it wasn't granted, they stole an engine, a set of coal cars, and a fourth car just for provisions. Word of this wild train spread through Montana, and at every stop, Hogan's army were cheered on by locals.
We got a beer cart!
The train's coming through. There's no internet. You got to see the shit. The feds, though, were a little less than happy. Together with the Northern Pacific Railroad, the feds followed in a chase train and eventually stopped them nearly 100 miles away in the town of Forsyth. Hogan and his men surrendered peacefully and were found in possession of 3 guns, 2 of which were broken, and 43 Bibles. And despite that, the feds still shot and killed a guy.
Fed's gonna fed.
Yeah, I mean, this is considered to actually be kind of a test run to the Pullman strikes, where the feds got to see what worked and what didn't, and they're like, oh, we could just beat the shit out of people. Great.
Oh, it doesn't matter how many Bibles they have. We can just kill a man.
We killed a guy and no one cares? Neat. So in total, about 40 industrial armies would join Jacob's march to DC, each beginning from their own particular regions. But much like Kelly's army, the moment these groups got to the Mississippi River, the support they had amongst states hurt most by the panic ceased, and these men became viewed as dangerous vagabonds at best and evil anarchists at worst. As for Jacob and his men, their numbers grew to around 600 men as they traveled through Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Maryland. A number of press also began to travel alongside Coxey and his men, reporting on the day's travel and supplying sketches of the various protesters. Journalists would tell stories of the tiny power struggle between Jacob and a man who went by the name of Lewis Smith, but preferred to be called the Great Unknown. But while Jacob was busy leading his men and interacting with the press, Carl started to kind of freak out in some ways. You see, Carl's one of those guys who should never be given power under any circumstances.
We definitely have that friend.
So Carl was born in Newton, Iowa in 1849 and would move to San Francisco the moment he came of age. He worked within politics, mainly as an active member of the pro-labor rights Working Men's Party. However, it should be noted the Working Men's Party also had a real xenophobic streak, and one of their main planks was kicking all the Chinese out of America, which Carl supported.
Oh, Carl.
So by the time that Carl had met Jake in Chicago, he had taken on a bit of a costume for his public appearances that might have started as publicity at first, but seems to have become a very serious persona for him. Stated by historian Donald McMurray, quote, Brown's picturesque appearance made him a conspicuous figure wherever he went. Tall, heavy, and bearded, his unkempt hair streaked with gray, he added to the effect by wearing an exaggerated Western costume. It consisted of a buckskin coat with fringes and buttons made from Mexican silver $50, high boots, and a sombrero, which I will note he wore sideways. A fur cloak when weather permitted, and around his neck, instead of a collar, a string of amber beads, the gift of his dying wife. Closer inspection revealed the reason why his men called him Old Greasy. It was suggested that he would have been a more pleasant companion if he had just bathed oftener.
Oh my God. And then a century later, his great-great-great-grandson would show up on January 6th at the Capitol with a bunch of Nordic tattoos.
Oh
and
my
a fucking Viking helmet.
You know, I would say keep that in mind because we can make some fucking parallels with what's about to fucking happen. Oh, no. They're not the worst parallels, but there's some interesting parallels.
They're not the worst, but they could be better.
So one of Carl's redder flags is, I'm just going to say it. Dude was an aspiring cult leader.
Oh, no.
See, Carl was a follower of a completely brand new religion called Theosophy that had been founded about 5 years prior. It was created by a Russian immigrant by the name of Helena Blavatsky and a pair of dudes from Vermont. And the religion itself really has no official beliefs. Believers in Theosophy still continue to say it's not a religion, but it was pretty much the very first sort of new age, kind of Wiccan-y sort of religion. The sort of thing where a bunch of white people see Buddhism and they're like, oh, I can make money off that.
Yeah, with the group of people that originated it, it sounds like it was Far West orgy that just lasted a few days too long. It was just like, this should have just been a one night thing, and somehow now we're religion.
Yeah. So the general core of the belief structure is that there are a set of 3 masters of knowledge who more than likely live in Tibet, and they have the knowledge of an ancient religion that we have all forgotten. But lucky for us, Helena can contact them telepathically, and we can learn through them through this method to discover this ancient knowledge. According to Helena, she met them at one point, and you could find her writings supposedly somewhere in Tibet. No one ever has. No one's ever been able to prove that she was there.
Nope.
But that's the general gist. Carl, though, started to make his own twist on Theosophy. As he talked to a journalist, he began to reveal that he believed that Jacob and him contained large quantities of the soul of Jesus Christ. He called Jacob the cerebrum of Christ and called himself the cerebellum of Christ. And as for the army, well, they were the commonweal of Christ. Now, commonweal is a word, it's commonwealth without the TH at the end.
What?
Yeah, it's really weird. I think it was a spelling error, but he already said it, so he stuck with it. And you legit cannot say that kind of shit around 19th century journalists without it becoming the story. And Carl quickly grew to distrust the journalists, calling them, quote, august-eyed demons of hell, to which the journalists replied by wearing name tags that just said the word demon.
Okay, that's clever. I'm into that.
There's a moment where they're walking along the B&O Canal, or the Baltimore and Ohio Canal in Maryland, and the journalists have their own boat, and they named it the Sweeping Demon, I believe, and just consistently fucking with this guy who's clearly not well.
Where was that kind of sarcasm the past 4 yeyears? It's like, for real.
Overwhelmingly ignored. No, you can't work at CNN with that kind of sarcasm.
What I wouldn't give.
So in total, about 20 journalists would end up following the army all the way to DC, and they got some really fucking interesting pictures. The thing that was really striking to me is that a lot of the guys who were walking with Coxey and Carl, they got very into this idea that they were a branch of Christ's soul. There are a number of people carrying signs that say the cerebellum of Christ with a drawing of Jacob. Someone has a Conestoga wagon that on the right says the commonweal of Christ. It turned into this thing where it's like, yeah, we have no jobs and we'd really like to have jobs, to this is a religious moment and we are direct descendants of Christ in a way or another, and we are also a new religion, and also that pizza parlor is kidnapping children.
I mean, honestly, I said it before, I'll say it again. You get too many men in a room for too long, you end up with the Vatican or ISIS. Just not good things. Just invite women, invite non-binary people.
I mean, you know what they say, if you get 99 men in a room with typewriters, eventually one of them will say something terrible, and it'll probably take a minute.
It'll be immediate.
I just typed the word cunt. Is that okay? Can I do that?
Hey, look what happens if I type the letter 8 and then the equal sign a bunch of times and then a capital D.
Be fair, that is funny. So despite all the chaos and separate plans and federal intervention, Coxey's army and others would actually arrive to a farm in Maryland just outside of DC on April 30th. In total, 6,000 men had made it. The next day, they would march down to the U.S. Capitol, and Jacob Coxey would read his full proposal to Congress. However, there was one small hitch. Jacob and his men were formally allowed to march down Pennsylvania Avenue to the Capitol, but they were strictly forbidden from stepping even 1 foot on the property. So the next day, the army marched down Pennsylvania Avenue, stopped at the Capitol, and Jacob Coxey placed 1 foot on the Capitol lawn and was immediately arrested for carrying illegal banners and, quote, walking on the grass. Carl would follow suit and then also be arrested, and the army would stay off of America's lawn. Jacob and Carl would stay in jail for about 20 days, and both were issued fines of $5. The $5 fine was for walking on the grass, technically trespassing. And just as quickly as they were arrested, the movement just died. Without Coxey to lead them, the armies didn't have a backup plan. They had, on top of that, they were completely out of provisions. They had no long-term idea of how they were going to make this work.
Yeah, they're lightheaded and believing in the cult that just organically appeared.
Look,
probably dehydrated as all hell.
Those two guys are 1/3 Jesus, and they will figure this out once they get out of prison for carrying a sign someone didn't like.
We are 5/5 Christ, and we do not need a TH in our alphabet anymore.
I am the cerebellum of Chris. But yeah, and with all that they had done, it died off and people just started going home. There were armies that were showing up after the main group had left, only to find that everyone was gone and the movement was dead.
That essentially they were late to the party.
100%. And Congress would end up killing the big idea bill in the hearing stage and would never even come to a vote. A spectator of the whole march was quoted as saying the following, quote, "The Coxey movement died out as rapidly as it started, and within the year it is already a half-forgotten episode. It is almost impossible to realize now the intensity of feeling it evoked. It is not probable its like will ever be seen again. It was as unique as a stray comet." And the sad thing about all this was Jacob tried something very serious and very genuine to cause good change. But by giving power to such an unserious person as Karl Brown and having no backup or long-term plan for the march, all Jacob was able to do was make a fad movement at best and a meme at worst. Because that's the crazy thing, is this march was national news every single fucking day. There were articles in Harper's Weekly debating whether or not they were anarchists or dangerous. And then the second it fell apart, people quit giving a fuck. Some even stating like 6 months later, people could barely even remember it. It's like murder hornets. And the thing was, even after doing this, Jacob lost even more. Most of his family would end up disowning him for doing this. His sister outright called him an embarrassment, while his father Thomas called Jacob, quote, "stiff-necked, cranky, and pig-headed."
Okay,
and even
Dad.
I know, like that's such a dick move. Like I'm trying to help people. But it's also really unclear what happened between Jacob and Karl, because at some point their friendship died, but didn't die quite enough to the point that Karl would end up marrying Jacob's daughter Mamie in 1895.
El Scandalo.
Jacob did not approve of the marriage, but
No.
thankfully it was referred to as historically brief, and they filed for divorce very shortly thereafter. And Karl and Jacob never spoke again.
Wow.
But you know, it's really time for Jacob's next step in life. It's time for Jacob not to just march on Congress. It's time for Jacob to be Congress. And that's where we're going to start next time.
Oh my goodness.
The many attempts of Jacob Coxey to enter the world of politics.
AKA episode 2. What's the big idea? Coxey returns.
Look, I get it. I was a theosophist. I thought I was part Jesus for a little bit. What's the big deal? We've all been there.
We've all had a moment where we think we're only a third Christ.
Yeah, it's so depressing just because the idea behind what he's trying to do makes sense. It just like to be able to help people as quickly as possible. And a march like this, I could absolutely see that being a huge deal today. If people weren't, you know, to sound like a boomer asshole, if people weren't Ubering to the fucking protest, if like people marched from San Francisco to DC, I mean, for one, that's completely unreasonable. But if they did that, that would be a huge fucking event.
I'm just like aghast and heartbroken because this march that was just actively trying, I mean, sure, it literally got culty. But before that, it was generally just to like show up and show out.
Yeah.
Because unemployment was rapid and multiple industries had been completely decimated.
Yeah. Well, it's also noted that, you know, nowadays when you do protests, it's on the Capitol lawn. It's at the ellipses. It's at these major places that back then, if you stepped foot on it, you were arrested for trespassing. And it's kind of considered Coxey's army was the first real attempt to do that kind of protest.
And to acknowledge that these spaces are the people's
Exactly.
spaces. So like trespassing for whom?
Yeah.
But that's just it too. It's like it only took him like taking a step onto the lawn and he was arrested and thrown in jail for 20 days. Like not an insignificant amount of time.
Yeah. And literally his only plan was to read a speech. After that, they had no other plans. There wasn't a plan to like dig in and stay. There wasn't a plan to, you know, raid the Capitol building or anything like that. It's Jacob is going to read a speech and then we're done.
Yeah. And then meanwhile, you and I and all of our other listeners had to sit through the experience of January 6th.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, yeah, and I'm sure that back then, how we felt for January 6th is probably what a lot of people assumed it was going to be, not just like a completely deflating moment when they're like, oh no, they arrested him? Can they do that?
like truly deflating, like farty noise from the helium balloon deflating.
Yeah.
Sad.
Well, and it's all these people who have dealt with strike breakers. They've dealt with violence on their own end during the labor movement. So it does make me wonder, like, was there a stronger show of force there than they were expecting? Was it more of like a military force or something like that, where they're like, okay, this is the real deal. Let's step the fuck back.
Right.
Or were they just fucking tired from walking all that time that they're just like, I cannot fucking fight right now.
Again, dehydrated. Yes.
Oh, man. So next week we're going to dive in even further into the life of Jacob Coxey. We're going to pour one out for legal tender Coxey, that sweet 7-year-old summer child. Yeah, we're going to learn about this guy's just persistent fucking life.
Yes, Coxey.
Woo! So thank you for joining us this week, y'all. I'll see you next week on Gadfly. Gadfly is a production of Added Serotonin. Our episodes are edited by Brianna Valentine of Rem Alternus Productions. Our theme song is Sophomore Makeout by Silent Partner, and you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at GadflyPod.
Ready to level up your cosplay game? Check out the Geek Forge on Etsy. With a variety of props to give your photos that extra spark, you'll find just what you need. Hold magical fire in the palm of your hand, or take a potion to restore your mana. With a large variety of colors, you can choose your own magical flavor for your cosplay. Bring drama to your photo shoots with these vibrant props and more, all available at the Geek Forge. Are you ready to level up your cosplay?